for this session. Thank you, Armayo. All right, recording is in progress. So we will be good. If you need to leave, you can always watch the recording. I'll send it out afterwards. And so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat though, because I like to keep these sessions interactive. So if you have questions as we're going, feel free to ask and I'll do my best to get to them if it's appropriate at that time. If not, I will get to everybody's questions at the end. Okay. So, full transparency, this webinar, I'm going to try and give you as much value as humanly possible in just about an hour. Giving you all my years of pre-med mentorship, MCAT prep, knowledge that I can. At the back half of the webinar slash masterclass, I'm going to talk about our ultimate advising program. So that's the program where we work with students to help them get into medical school, basically wherever you're at in the process. And so if you're already an ultimate advising student, if you're one of our students, I see a couple of you in the chat. If you're here, you probably don't need to stick around for that part. But I will continue also doing Q&A. So you may want to stick around, but some of the stuff you'll probably have heard before. But that's kind of what the structure is going to be. Does that sound good, guys? Can I get some six in the chat? Is that good with you? All right. Awesome. Okay, let's get started. Can everybody see my screen? Oh. Just one sec. All right, it's not going to let me do it not full screen. Okay, we're going to go full screen. And then just give me a sec. Sorry, I'm using a monitor, so I just want to make sure, does it come up clear or is it looking too wide? Give me a 6 if it looks okay. Okay, it looks okay. All right, great. All right, so I got the chat up. I got the slides up. We are ready to rock and roll, okay? I can see the chat as I'm going, actually, so this is good. So if you have questions, let me know, and we'll go from there, okay? So this presentation is titled How to Ace Your Pre-Med Classes, Score 512 plus on the MCAT, and Get into Medical School Using a Proven System for Success. Some of you may have seen this presentation before. Don't worry, because I've added some things to it, and we're also going to be interactive, and I'm going to do live Q&A, and I'm also going to go over one of our new tools in our pre-med tracker software. So there will definitely be some additions, even if this looks a little bit old to you. I promise it's not. And for those of you that are new and haven't seen this presentation before, I'm hoping that we're gonna give you lots of value here. Okay. All right. So let's get to it. So first off, if you're currently a struggling student, I just want you to know it's not your fault. I know that there's a lot of pressure on pre-med students, and a lot of students put a lot of blame on themselves and take everything really hard. And so I want you to know that it's okay. Pre-med is a very difficult field, if not one of the toughest fields. And so if you're not doing as well as you'd like to right now, it's not all on you. Most pre-med students, realistically, they don't have a 4-year plan. They get advice from peers, from parents, from advisors that are supposed to know what they're talking about. Maybe you see here, I have a little animation of the SDN warrior. Who here is, so, let me see in the chat if you go on the forums on Student Doctor Network or Reddit or whoever it is and it stresses you out. Yeah, I see a lot of people can relate with that. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So, this is the common pre-med experience that I'm describing, right? You're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. You're not sure what to do. I just want you to know you're not alone, as you can see. Okay. And others may even tell you, I've heard many students I've worked with that they've been told, I was told I couldn't get in, I'm not going to be able to get into medical school, that I should just give up now, or that you don't have what it takes. And I'm here to tell you that if this is what you want and you really want to be a doctor, then you absolutely can do it. Okay? So this is not the case. And the thing is that most pre-med students just don't know how to properly study. That's the first thing that if you can get down is going to make a major difference in your overall ability to get into medical school and to get through pre-med with less stress. So that's what we're going to cover a little bit today. And so you need the right strategies, but you also need proper guidance and dedication. And if you do those things, you can absolutely get into medical school. We've worked personally with students that started with us with less than a 3.0 GPA that are not in medical school. So for the students here that thought if they got one grade that's less than an A, you weren't going to get in, I can promise you that is not the case, okay? All right, and that's what we're here for, okay? So I want to show you exactly how to replicate the success in this webinar. So we're going to be talking about transforming your study habits, extracurriculars, research, MCAT prep, the personal statement, activities, the secondaries, interview prep, post-interview management, and then hopefully med school acceptance and celebration. So this is a brief timeline of the process. And my goal is to try and hit as much of this as I can in this webinar, whether that's through the presentation or answering your questions. All right. And so this webinar is really for two types of pre-meds. The first are those who are early in their pre-med career. My goal is to provide you a new study system that's going to help you start acing your classes and best prepare for the MCAT with less stress. Okay. So that's for my people in here that are saying they're freshmen and sophomores. This is parts for you. But it's also this webinar, if you're a career changer, I saw we had a career changer in here, a non-traditional student, or you need to do a post back. Let's say you're a junior and it hasn't gone as well as you'd like. It's never too late to achieve your dream if you start to implement what we talk about in this webinar correctly. And so again, if just because you're, let's say, not a freshman anymore or not a sophomore and you're here watching it, it's okay. You still have time. You could still get into med school. All right. So my overall goal for you today is one, to change the trajectory of your pre-med career and teach you how to start getting better grades immediately. Two, to prepare for the MCAT using the most effective study techniques used by medical students to ace their boards. Three, to teach you 3 application tactics. I wish I could teach you more, but today we're going to be able to cover 3 tactics that are going to instantly increase your chance of acceptance into a top medical school. And these methods work whether you're already an A student or even if you've never earned an A before. These techniques are going to save you time and massively increase your acceptance chances. Does that sound good? Could I get a 6 in the chat if that sounds good, or a thumbs up? All right. Love it. Love it. All right. Let's do it. All right. And just a quick background on me. My name's Adam Nessum. I am the founder of the Pre-Med Consultants. I graduated from Cornell with over a 4.0 GPA. Whoa, this is an outdated slide. So I am now a 4th-year resident, not 4th-year medical student, but I went to Einstein College of Medicine and then Montefiore for my residency. And I just recently matched into a sports and spine fellowship at Cornell Columbia. So that's where I'll be in my last year of training. I was formerly one of the head instructors at one of the major test prep companies before I founded the Pre-Med Consultants, and I've mentored thousands of students and helped them get into med school. You may have seen, some of our content on TikTok or Instagram. Who here seen some of our content from social media? Yeah, probably a lot of the people that are here. All right, love it, love it. All right, and so yeah, I've had some features, and you know, I only say that not to brag. I really like the accolades are not important. The reason I bring it up is because that was not always the case. Even me, I've done a lot of things. I was not always, well, I would say this, and probably some of you could relate. In high school, things did come easy, and then I got to college and I got a rude awakening, right? So the first ever test that I took at Cornell, I got a 68%, and I saw that and I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not getting into medical school. Who here has had a similar experience? Let me see in the chat. Yeah, awesome. I see Isabel. Nuzat, Jules, Nathan, Melissa, or Nathaniel, Sarah. Yeah, exactly. Super common, right? And so I thought, what worked in high school? Oh, I just study, I brute force it, and then I'm going to get good grades. Well, as I'm sure many of you have seen, that doesn't always work when you get to university and college and you're taking hard pre-med classes. Okay. And so what I realized is that I needed to learn a system that's going to allow me to do well in classes without feeling like I was going to burn out from studying. And so what I did is I excessively researched the science behind learning to figure out how to properly study for exams. And I honestly continued to refine these as I became a teacher myself and got onto medical school, learning even more of these strategies. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some things that you could do as we're about to start the semester, which I'm sure many of you, unless you're already graduated, most of you are going to be starting the semester, and how you could start it off strong. And then even if you've already graduated and you're not taking any more classes, these principles are still going to apply for your MCAT preparation. Okay. All right. Who's ready to get going on that? How does that sound? And actually, I'll take a quick pause. Does anyone have any questions up until this point? Okay. All right, let's do it. All right, so here is how you start off a semester strong. First, get ahead in your classes early. So when I that sounds redundant, but what I mean by that is most students will try to, get ahead already in the middle of the semester and play catch up. I want you for we're approaching the semester. Some of you may have even started. I want this to be the time where you start front loading some of that work, because I know a bunch of you are at syllabus week probably, or whatever you call it at your school. It seems like it should be a time for just having fun and partying. And I'm not saying you can't have fun as a pre-med student, but this is the time to actually start pre-studying a lot of that work. And here's the reason. If you study and get, let's say, a week or two ahead, and you start doing those readings for classes and doing practice questions and doing homework assignments, and you could just get 2 weeks ahead, the amount of pressure that'll take off from you. Let's say something comes up and you can't do those orgo assignments for a day or two, or you have to focus more of your attention into one of the classes that has a big assignment coming up, or honestly, it's a hard topic and you need more time. Being able to get ahead in the beginning and build up a couple weeks of legroom can make a significant difference for the whole semester, whereas a lot of students do the opposite. They're like push everything off in the beginning. They don't even study that first couple weeks, and then they're playing catch up. Okay. So the first thing you could do, it seems silly, but during the early, right before semester starts or right in the beginning of the semester, please get ahead and start doing those readings. If you don't yet know the assignments, here's a quick tip. Ask an upperclassman who's taking the course. They're going to give you the syllabus from last year. It's almost going to be identical every year. And so you could start learning what the textbook readings or what the assignments are going to be and get ahead. Okay. So has anyone done this, or who pledges that they're going to do this for this semester? All right. Nathaniel says, I pledge. Sharonda says, me. Nadi says, me. All right. I love it, guys. Good. All right. Number two, and this one's going to maybe seem a little weird to you guys, but start the practice exams that you get for your classes after a few weeks. Can anyone tell me in the chat, why do you think I say do those practice tests after only a few weeks into the semester? And also, what do most people do? When do most people take the practice test? Maybe 2 days before the real exam? Why do you think I'm saying start those practice tests so early? What's the purpose of a practice test? Yep, someone said to prevent cramming. Good. Identify weak areas. Great. To experiment too. Love it. Familiarize yourself with the test. Wow. Usually I ask this question, we don't get all the right answers right away. This is a good group we have. To know your weak points, to get to know what material would be on the test. Amazing. You guys got most of it. So what most students use the practice tests in their classes for are as assessments of what they're going to score on the real day. Now, while that feels nice to know what you're probably going to score a day or two later, does that actually improve your score significantly? No. If you get a 70 on your practice test a day before the test, now you just know you're in big trouble and you're going to cram the night before, which you're probably going to do anyway. And so what you really should be doing is using those practice tests
as a learning tool for the whole semester. And a lot of students are like, well, I don't want to waste the test. I am not worried about you wasting the practice exams. And here's why. I promise you, if you take the test in week 3 of the semester and then you take it 6 to 8 weeks later, right before your real test, you're not even going to get 100% on that test. And so that means there's still going to be things that you forgot. And if there's things that you didn't forget, that's great. That's the whole point. And so those things that you forgot, well, now you know, okay, those were the areas that even after having seen the questions, you still need more work. And so now, right before the test, we could really hone in on those weak areas. And throughout the rest of the semester, you know how that teacher likes, a professor likes to test the material. And you can start to focus in and study based on what you think you're going to be tested. And again, know where your weak points are. So I want you guys using the practice test as an assessment tool, not not as an assessment tool, but as a practice tool to actually learn the material. The best way to learn material is to do active studying, and active studying is the form of practice questions. And while a lot of times classes they'll give practice questions at the end of the textbook. I'm sure many of you know those questions at the end of the textbook are not always very similar to the way that the questions show up on the actual exam. Does that sound familiar to anyone? And does this make sense to everyone? How are we doing? Is this good content? Helpful advice? Okay, so love it, love it. Yeah, someone asked, what if the professor doesn't offer a practice test? So most of the time they will. If they don't, that is when you could go to the textbooks and get practice questions, or you can go online and get practice questions on those topics. The best way to study materials is to do questions. And so, especially for a lot of the pre-med classes, right? Chemistry, bio, like if for example, if you need to do a titrations or equal acids bases question, like this requires you going through the motions of actually doing the math and the steps and the orgo reactions, not just reading about it in a textbook. That's an extremely passive way to study, and that's actually how most students study. And so I would be surprised if they don't give you some form of questions, whether it's through homework assignments or practice tests. A lot of places will give you at least one practice test. And then what you could do these days is feed those practice tests into AI and say, give me the same type of question, but with different variables. So they change the number. And that way you could actually practice doing those questions with different numbers so you can really learn the steps that you need to do to get to the right answer. Ayana said, hello, should we start using Anki for such questions, or is that primarily for the MCAT? Great point. I'm going to get to that coming up. So you almost beat me to it. All right. Number 3, look at that. Use space repetition, aka Anki. Personally, that's what most med students use for space repetition, and what I like because of the customization. But regardless of how you study, you should be using some form of space repetition. I have all our students use Anki. I saw someone said they prefer Quizlet to be more helpful. So here's my stance. Quizlet is more user friendly. Anki has a little bit of a learning curve, but it's more customizable. However, what I notice with Quizlet is a lot of students use it as flashcards, but they don't properly use space repetition. And so what I mean by that is with Anki, you're going to get your reviews to see every single day, and you should be doing them every single day. All the cards that are due that day based on the space repetition algorithm, you should do. So if you're going to do Quizlet like that, I'm okay with it. I tend to see that people will do Quizlet like they'll go through all the flashcards one day, then randomly do it a week from then before the test, but you're not properly intervaling the cards. And so the whole point with Anki is they have an algorithm that will show you the card at the exact point you want to see it, right as you're about to forget it. And so if you do those cards every single day, you're going to be pushing the content farther and farther into your long-term memory. And if you get a card wrong, the algorithm will then start to show you that card more frequently. And so this is how you're allowed to memorize information for the long term. And so what we have all our students do at the Pre-Med Consultants is we give you our Anki deck that goes with our MCAT program, but our students will start to use those cards for their classes. So if you're in bio, do the MCAT deck that we give you, just do the bio cards that go along with your bio class. And that way you're actually getting way ahead of your MCAT studying if you're consistent. Does that make sense to everyone? And Gurprit asks, how many cards should you do per day? You generally don't need to do more than like 30 to 40 new cards a day, sometimes even less. The key is doing all your reviews. And the problem is if you try to do too many new cards a day, the reviews stack up and then become unmanageable. If you're only doing, let's say, 30 or 40 new cards a day, even less than it, honestly, sometimes, in the beginning, it might feel slow, right? You're like, oh, I didn't even do that much. But over time, it'll build up. And we actually want to find a good equilibrium. And so if you only do like 30, 40 new cards a day, you'll get to a point where like you're doing 300-ish reviews a day, which is a good amount. But in a deck of maybe where 3,000 cards, 4,000 cards. And so you have all these facts you have memorized, and you're only doing then 300 cards a day. If you do too many new cards at too fast, so let's say you do 100 or 200 a day in a 3-day span, you're going to end up having so many reviews to do every day that it becomes unmanageable. So actually ease into it is a better approach. And is anyone here not know what Anki is in the chat, or has everyone here heard of Anki? Henri said, can I get some advice on how to actually use Anki in the correct way as I can't get it set up the right way? Yeah, so I'm going to get this towards the end. We do have our ultimate advising program that we help with setting up Anki properly. You can at any time ask one of our coaches to go over how to set it up, the different flashcards. I am going to give you guys a bonus, which will be a little primer that should help you for free at the end as well. But if you want like more one-on-one help, that's where our ultimate advising comes in. Someone said, not at all. I'm a parent though. Yeah. So you won't, unless you're studying for the MCAT soon, you don't need to know Anki. All right. Corey said, need to know what Anki is. Awesome. I've never heard of Anki. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Awesome. So you guys will, you'll definitely, we'll get to it a little bit at the end. And then obviously, if you end up working with us, we'll show you exactly how to do it. All right. Number 4, wake up early and study before class. This is so important and so understated, but it can make such a big difference. And here's why. I'm going to give you a typical example of what most students do. Most students wake up right before class. They run to class and they get there 5 minutes late, sweating, take some time to settle into class. They try to write down and transcribe everything that the professor said. I know now there's all these like note sharing apps and things like that. So maybe not as much anymore, but a lot of students are usually trying to write every note that everything the professor says down, but they're not even really absorbing the information. A lot of times it becomes hard to keep up because you don't really know the content. And so most students end up dozing off halfway through. They're searching on Facebook and TikTok or whatever they're doing. And they're like, I'm going to go study this later at night. And then later that night is really like the first pass of the material that they get through. Does this sound familiar to anybody? I see a bunch of yeses. All right. Yes, exactly. And so here is a second approach, which I highly encourage, where if you just wake up a little bit early before your classes, here's how it can make such a big difference overall. Let's say you wake up and you pre-study the information for your lecture that day. And then you go to lecture and you don't need to furiously write notes. You just sit back and listen and try to fill in the gaps of what you've already studied and primed yourself and figure out, okay, what's important to the professor? What does that mean that I read based on their explanation? And it'll be easier, right? Because you already have some context. So a lot of times it's easier to pay attention in that class when you come in with context. Then later in the day, maybe you do some of the Anki cards that go with that class that you made, or you just do another look through of the information. Well, later that day, it's now your third pass through the information, where the typical student's it's only their first pass. And so you are now 3 times ahead of the typical student where you really didn't spend much extra time studying. And you do this every single day over the course of a semester, and you'll see how it can make such a big increase overall. Does that make sense to everybody? And so if you want to be efficient, you want to have time for other things in college, right? Hanging out with friends, doing clubs, whatever it may be, waking up early before class can make such a big difference. Someone said, what if you don't know what the professor is going through for the day? Most of the times that should be told to you ahead of time what the lecture is going to be on. It would be very rare for it to be a surprise. And if it is, I would just recommend emailing the professor for the course syllabus. And if the course syllabus doesn't show you what's in the class, email the professor asking them if they could tell you what will be in the schedule. All right. And someone asks, can you use the cards to learn with no background in the subject, like chemistry cards if you haven't taken chem? Yes, you can, but the way I like to have students approach Anki is you study information, you get exposed to it, you watch a video, you see the lecture, whatever, and then you unsuspend, it's called, that's the Anki term, the cards associated with that information. So that way there's context to what you're studying. All right, and then the last thing I want to say for starting the semester off strong is just to set to have no excuses and to set high expectations. So can I see in the chat, what is everyone going to shoot for this semester? What GPA? 4.0, 4.0. All right, you guys got the right answer. Love it. Love it. Yes, you should be shooting every single semester for a 4.0 GPA without exception. Do you have to get a 4.0 GPA? No, it's not the end of the world. But if you shoot for it, you're going to be that much more likely to actually get it. If you're complacent saying, oh, I just want to have a 3.5, well, you may even fall short of that, and then you're with a 3.3. But if you have if your goal is 4.0 and you fall a little short of that, all right, we'll live with a 3.8 GPA, okay? And what's the phrase? Shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you'll land in the stars, or something like that, right? So that's essentially the principle we're going for here. And they've done studies on this. If you set certain goals, you're more likely to achieve those goals when it comes to things in general, and specifically with GPA for classes. And if you're a master's student, you should also be shooting for a 4.0. I see that was a question in the chat. All right, so it said 4.0 is easy. Yes, if only. All right, so that was studying. Next, I'm going to go into MCAT. I'm going to go a little bit faster through this, and then those admission tips, and then I'm going to go into our program. But how's this been so far? Is this action-packed value? Are you guys getting something from this? Awesome, awesome. Okay, great, great, great. So the principles I just talked about are now going to be translated to MCAT prep, and how I recommend you guys study for the MCAT, whether you use a program like ours or you're self-studying, which I don't necessarily recommend, but if you are, or even if you get some other program, use these principles because they're going to make a big difference. And so I'm going to first talk about the old method I call of MCAT studying, and then we'll talk about the new method, right? So the old method, and this is typical, some of you may relate. If you were about to start MCAT prep, you might have already started doing this, and hopefully you could change courses real quick. All right, so let me give you an example. Let's say you had a January test date and you're using the old method of studying. So what most students do is they spend an entire summer reading almost all those major test prep 7-book series, right? Those MCAT books you're reading, you're highlighting until your hand cramps. You basically rewrote an entire textbook yourself because you're taking notes on everything, right? Most students take too many notes, which is actually a fairly passive form of studying. And then what happens? By the end of the summer, you forget pretty much everything you've read, right? The biochem book you read in the beginning of the summer, and you're now on to the psych soc book, and you don't remember anything you read from that 3 months ago. Okay? And then what happens? You usually take a diagnostic exam, you do poorly, and you start freaking out. And then you start studying during the fall semester. A lot of people will end up taking one of the online prep courses, or whether it's an in-person course. But a lot of these courses are just being lectured at for hours at a time. And they assign even more reading. So it's more textbook highlighting and taking notes. And what does all this do? It wastes hours of valuable time where you're listening to just long MCAT lectures rather than what's most effective, and that is doing MCAT practice questions and reviewing those questions. There are studies that have shown that the more individual questions you do for board exams like the USMLEs and big tests like the MCAT, it correlates with a higher score. And so doing questions is probably the number one predictor, because there's no perfect predictor, but doing lots of practice questions is the number one predictor of performing well. But most students don't really start doing legit practice questions until they start taking practice tests way later into their studying, because a lot of students will do what they call the content phase. You may have seen like your favorite influencer pre-med talk about this. It's just because that's what's been passed down, but the evidence and learning science does not really support just doing this content phase, especially because a lot of you have already, in a sense, done a content phase. You've been to classes, you've seen all this material before. Now it's about applying it for the MCAT. And now, I know you might not have seen all stuff, and I'm not saying don't do content review, but you could do content review while also doing what's most effective in techniques, which we're going to get to in just a bit. And then lastly, what most people do is then they finally start studying more intensely over winter break. They take many practice exams and they're struggling to get them all done and reviewing them all in that 1 month window leading into their exam. Okay, so why is this method outdated? Who could tell me why this is outdated? Not effective. Yes. Why not? Mostly passive studying. Exactly, Isabel. Exactly. Leads to burnout. That's correct. Okay. So basically, it does not include the most effective study techniques, which are backed by learning science. And this includes problem-based learning and spaced repetition. Okay. And so, exactly, too much consuming in a bad way. Exactly. So, what's the new MCAT method? So, first, we incorporate problem-based learning. So, how do we do it at the Pre-Med Consultants? We have all our students use UWorld. It's probably the best third-party question bank. That's not the real AMC exams. And Anki. And I'm going to pause it right here. I'm going to pause the slides and pause for questions because I have some bonus updated slides I want to get to that I realize I'm not on right now. So 1 second. And while I do that, I'm going to take some questions in the chat. When starting out, would you recommend still using UWorld? Yes, I would. So I'm going to get to that in just a bit. But essentially, I definitely recommend using UWorld from the very beginning because you want to be doing practice questions as early as possible. The reason people don't do that is they're scared of getting them wrong because they're like, I haven't seen this material in a while. I'm going to get the questions wrong. I don't care if you get the questions wrong. That's literally the entire point is to who here has gotten a question wrong before on a real exam and then they've remembered that question for like months to come. Let me see in the chat if that's ever happened to someone. Yeah, me, 100%. Exactly. Because it sticks with you more when it's a question you've gotten wrong. And so doing UWorld and doing these questions and being engaging in the material, that's the best way to do it. What I tell our students, I don't care if you got a 40% in the beginning. I actually expect you to get grades that low in the beginning. And so if you go in with that mindset, then you know that all you need to do is learn from the material. The UWorld, like we talked about with the practice test, is a learning opportunity. It's not just an assessment tool. And most people use this stuff too much as an assessment tool. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. All right, I see some other questions. I will get to it, I promise. I just want to get back to the slides. And I'm gonna move it along a little bit. Okay. So as you can see, these are updated because also in our program and what I recommend is doing both UWorld and the AMC materials. And then how do we couple that to memorize all that information? Well, we couple it with using spaced repetition and Anki. If you're looking for Anki, that's the logo because there's a couple like Anki dupes, so you don't want to get the wrong one. Anki, just for the record, is free on the computer. It is a paid app, like a one-time purchase, but I promise you're going to be using it through all med school as well. So I recommend getting it on your phone. And in our course, we have like videos on how to sync the computer and the phone, so you could always study on the go. Okay. And then lastly, so you have your questions, you have your spaced repetition and active recall, and then we have what I recommend is a high yield review resource. Not I don't, as you can tell, it like the long textbooks. I'm okay if you learn from textbooks by actually reading textbooks, amazing. I notice most students learn from watching videos better, and or lectures. And so the way we do it, we structure with our textbook is just the high yield points that you have to have memorized and summarized for the MCAT. And so we have this book, the MCAT Power Book, where it's basically just reviewing after learning and working with the materials and questions and Anki and watching a content video. And then if you really still feel like you don't know material and you really want to go to a textbook, that's when you go to the textbook, which is reverse from what most people do, is they just start with the textbook and then they do the other stuff later. All right. So that's the new method. Okay. And so just to prove that this works, here's some of our student success stories. So Sabrina, one of our students who's now almost graduating med school, actually, if not graduated, she went from barely breaking over 500 to end up scoring in the 90th percentile. Here is actually now Dr. Portnoy, who's actually one of our Anki specialists, because he got so good at Anki that he actually works now with the pre-med consultants as an Anki specialist coach. But he went from, he actually had to retake the MCAT. He used these methods and he increased his score by 10 points. He got into his first choice med school in New York and matched into radiology. He actually is finishing up his residency and just matched into his top choice fellowship. And to this day, he just told me the other day, like the same methods with Anki he was using to study for the USMLEs as well as the board exams for radiology. So this stuff works, and it's going to be tools that you could take with you throughout the course of your career. All right, you could see some of our other testimonials from past students that have gotten in, and we have tons of these. All right. So last thing, and then I'm going to switch over into like our program and everything that it includes. But I wanted to give you 3 quick, easy tactics that are going to increase your chances without, with just, these simple tactics alone, because most students just don't even know how to apply. So I know this might not apply to everyone that's a freshman, sophomore, if you're not applying right now, but these will be important to take with you. And I call this the proactive application model. And so most students do not apply early, and applying early is extremely important for med school apps. So if there's one thing you could do to already increase by 20, 30% your application chances, is getting your app in the first week or two. Because the way it works for admissions at a lot of medical schools is the interviews are rolling. And so there's less spots as you go along. And so let's say you apply in August, like you should not be applying right now, for example. If you applied right now, while technically you're allowed to apply, there's already many people who have gotten interview offers. And so now there's less interview offers, which just means they're going to look at any remaining apps and scrutinize them more intensely because now they have less offers to give. And so the earlier you are, the better your overall chances. So that's number 1. Number 2, so that's applying early. Number 2 is apply broadly. And so making a good med school list, basing this off of median MCAT, median GPA, whether you're out of state, whether they accept international, if you're international, the school fit, and how that goes. Ayana, if you're confused about cycles, I can answer those questions at the end. All of these are important when making your school list, and making a good list and actually applying to enough schools. Most students don't apply to enough schools, actually, makes a big difference. So applying to 5, 10 more schools may right there, again, increase your chances of acceptance by 20, 30%. So you do these little things, right? You apply to the right schools, you apply to more schools, you apply early. These things stack on each other to overall increase your acceptance chances, okay? So I'm trying to give you quick things that you could do to overall increase it. This one's not going to be as quick, but that is when it comes to the personal statement, properly telling your story, okay? So the personal statement should have 2 goals, and it's in the name. It's the personal statement to medical school, okay? So let's break that down. First, it should say, I should read this and I should walk away knowing why you want to be a doctor, and specifically a doctor. So the exercise I like to use with students is, if I could take that out, if you use the word doctor anywhere, and I could submit this application to PA school, nursing school, or any other healthcare school, and it makes sense and doesn't need to be tweaked, then you didn't accomplish the goal of showing why specifically you want to be a physician. Okay. So that's goal number one of the personal statement and the journey you've gone through to get to that point. Okay. Number two, it's the personal statement. So that means it should be personal. I should walk away knowing about you as a person, and knowing about your background, your growing up, what you like to do, something that's something that's been a major influence in your life, not just a regurgitation of your overall application. That's already in your application. I don't need a series of events of everything you've ever done. Okay. And so combining those two is not an easy feat and something that takes a lot of skill. But at least if I could tell you those 2 points to think about when writing the personal statement, you could hopefully have a better vision in mind. Okay. So those are 3 quick points that I could tell you for application to improve your overall acceptance chances. All right. So that is pretty much what I wanted to cover with you on this webinar from a content perspective. How did I do so far? Was that helpful to everybody? Did I accomplish the goal of showing you how to do well in your classes, score 512 plus on the MCAT, and increase your acceptance chances? Awesome. All right. I'm glad. Okay. All right. So, and think about it. If you followed what I showed you today, and you use active study tactics, do you think that you could start getting better grades in your classes with less overall stress? And using the question-based MCAT approach, do you think that you can score a 512 plus on the MCAT? I bet you guys can. I know you can. And by having a proactive application strategy, do you think you will optimize your chances of getting into medical school? Here's the short answer. Yes, you will. Okay. So if you implement this over the course of your pre-med career, do you think you would be more successful? I definitely do. Let me see in the chat. And so who here is excited about what you've been hearing so far? Awesome. I see some yeses. Me. Love it, Nadia. Awesome. All right. Yes. Love it. Love it. All right. But who's feeling a little overwhelmed? I know we covered a lot. All right. And here's the thing, pre-med is a lot, right? So what you might still need help with, help navigating the pre-med timeline to your unique situation, the specifics of how to implement active recall, spaced repetition, and other key study strategies that we couldn't fully cover in the video and in this webinar today, and the ability to message or set up one-on-one sessions with a professional pre-med coach whenever you want to ensure you are supported during the process and taking all the right steps towards a strong application. Okay, so at this point, you also might need help with crafting your ideal timeline, gaining the right experiences, a full MCAT course, right? Of course, you guys are going to need to study for the MCAT that teaches you all the content you need to know, but more importantly, the test taking strategies, right? How to actually take the MCAT, which is something most students don't know at all, even if you're studying the content the right way with the spaced repetition and the active recall and the questions, okay? And reviewing those in a live setting with a coach, helping with properly sharing your unique story in the personal statement, doing exactly what we just talked about. And then obviously guidance with the secondary essays, mock interviews, making that school list, and all the other intricacies in the application process when the time comes. Okay, so what now? At this point, there's kind of 2 paths. Just to show you some more of our students that we've worked with. This was Gregory. He was a former TPC student. He said, my experiences have been going absolutely amazing. The resource that I was able to gain from Adam's program are absolutely high yield and effective. And then here is him messaging me that he got accepted to one of his top choices. And then he was also waiting to hear back from 2 other interviews he just did. Okay, here is some, you could see on our website testimonials of some of our amazing past students that have gone through our program. And so at this point, is it okay if I spend like 10 more minutes just going over a special offer I created for anyone that's on the webinar today, that's looking to absolutely crush it as a pre-med student, potentially working with us? And I know for some of our students that are already here, you're more than welcome to stick around. I will do more Q&A, but some of you are already in the program that are here. I know a lot of you are not. So is that good with everyone? Can I see a 6 in the chat if that's good with you guys? All right. Awesome. All right, perfect. So essentially, the company, the Pre-Med Consultants, we have something called the Ultimate Advising Program. This is our flagship program. It's pretty much what most of the students we work with join, because when I used to be one of the head instructors at one of the major test prep companies. When I started the Pre-Med Consultants, the goal was to create something that helps you with every step of the process, not just one facet. And that's because what I realize is most students, you need help learning these study strategies. You need help making sure you're getting that 4.0 GPA or as close to it as possible. Don't worry if you don't have 4.0. Obviously the MCAT prep, but then even if when I was teaching a lot of MCAT courses, right, we'd have people do MCAT prep, but then they didn't write a good personal statement because they didn't have that guidance. And then if they had a good MCAT score, they still didn't get in, which does happen every year. A lot of people with great grades don't get in because they don't have a good personal statement or they don't do well in the interviews. And also in the reverse, there's people that even if they don't have the top grades ever, they could still get in because they do well on those other things. And so we wanted to bring all that together into one program. And so what would you get? I'm going to just break it down, everything you're going to get if you end up working with us, what the value would be. So we have a 17 module program. It's going to walk you through everything you need to do to be a successful pre-med student. That would be valued at $1,997. You get 2 to 3 weekly office hours with our top coaches. So some of our coaches have gone to Pitt Med, Brown, Harvard, Yale. So really, and we have coaches that also do osteopathic medical school if you're interested in that. We have really coaches that span every facet. We have top medical students, resident physicians, attendings, and even work with deans of admissions at medical schools. All right. So if you were to just break down the value of that, the office hours is 6 hours a week. That would be $30 an hour, 180 a week. That would be $720 a month, technically, if you're actually paying that. You times that by 12 months, and that's over $8,000 just for the year of all those sessions that you get access to. You also get access to group coaching sessions with myself. That's a total value of $1,800 for those monthly sessions that you would get. And so if you stack that up so far, we have the Ultimate Advising Program, the 1 year of office hours, the 1 year of group coaching. And if you see here, I wrote, you actually, if you work with us, get all this until you're accepted into medical school. So I'm only counting the value of 1 year, but it's actually more than that. Okay, but wait, there's more. You also get, if you join, 5 premium one-on-one sessions that could be used for tutoring for things like MCAT at your discretion, or classes. Let's say you're struggling in Orgo. So the value of that is $250 an hour is what we charge if you're not a student with us. For those 5 hours alone is $1,250. We also have our pre-med tracker software that you get access to, which will help you navigate the entire process. So all of our students have their student profile. They're going to be able to see everything that they need to do. It checks it off. And I'm actually, once I finish, I'm actually going to do a live demo of that just so you guys can see. And the value of that would be for the year $997. You also would get access to a full MCAT course. So we call it the 60-week program because if you were doing nothing but studying, it would span over 16 weeks. Let's say you're studying 6 hours a day, 6 to 8 hours a day for those 16 weeks. But the benefit of being in the program is you get access to it as long as you need. And I honestly recommend studying 6 months to a year for most students. And that is a $3,500 value. You also already get included. You'll get an access to the UWorld subscription and the AMC subscription. The MCAT PowerBook, which goes for $149 on Amazon. You get 3 weekly live MCAT sessions. So if you break that down, it would be $500 a month for those sessions. Over a 6-month span would be $3,000. So that's about what our MCAT course is. You get the TPC admissions program, so help through everything you need with admissions, personal statement, applications, the activity section. So we do unlimited personal statement review. We do activity section review. We do the core secondaries. The only thing that's technically limited in this entire program actually is those secondary essays because there's so many essays. So we do have upgrades for that, but some students don't need it. And that would be $5,000. And then we also throw in other bonuses. So we have an Anki rewards program for our students that study really hard with Anki. We go over finances for pre-meds, and we have a TPC nutrition and fitness program actually. So we're always constantly adding to the resources for our students. And so, as you can see, we love our students. We try to put them first. And, I'm not even placing a value on that. But overall, we're not just a program. We're really very much a entire community that you get to be a part of if you decide to work with us. Okay. On top of that, I know it's crazy. There's that many resources, but there is more. We do a kickoff pre-med strategy call with you. So this is going to be with usually one of our coaches, and that is of $300 value, where you're going to make a timeline of everything you need to do from now until the day you get accepted into medical school. So you have a clear plan of exactly what you need to do. And then we also have a new insane bonus, and this won't always be around, but we have the ability for you to book an additional 30-minute coaching session up to once a week for anything that you need. And so if you're like struggling with orgo, physics, one of your classes, specific MCAT prep, personal statement review, general pre-med coaching, if you're applying to an internship, literally anything you need, as long as you've utilized our resources first, right? If we have a video on getting internships, we ask that you watch that video first and you write a question in the group about it. But as long as you do that, you're able to book in a bonus session with your coach. Okay, so that unlimited 30-minute private coaching, imagine you joined as a junior and you use just two sessions a month for 2 years. That's 48 sessions in total. If you were to do that, the 30-minute session, if you weren't a student of ours, it'd be $150 for the session. So if you do the math, that's $7,200 for those sessions. Okay. And so what's the total value of this program if you really broke it up individually? $1,997 for the ultimate advising modules. The office hours / coaching sessions over 8,640. A year of group coaching with me, $1,800. The premium tutoring hours, another $1,250. The tracker software, $997. The full 16-week program, $3,500. UWorld and AMC, the subscription, $744. The live MCAT classes and the MCAT program is $3,000. The TPC and missions program is $5,000. And the kickoff strategy call is $300, and then those unlimited bonus sessions, $7,200. So if you add that all up, the total value is $34,428, which obviously I know is a lot for pre-med students. So, and as crazy as it sounds, there will be companies that charge that amount of money. And if I did charge that, and all our program did was start helping you get better grades, made you feel more prepared and tackle pre-med, help you optimize your med school application to significantly increase your chance of becoming a doctor while feeling supported along the way. Considering the opportunity cost, right, of having to reapply to medical school can cost $6,000 to $10,000. A lot of times we see students do unnecessary masters and they spend $50,000 plus on a master's they didn't need. And so my favorite thing is helping save a student $50,000 right off the bat by avoiding those master's programs if you don't need it. And if you don't get in, right, the average physician salary is about $300K in lost earnings that you would otherwise, the quicker you're in medical school, be making. And so on top of that, the ability to impact the lives of your future patients, of course, is priceless. And so in the grand scheme of things, the opportunity cost here of not getting a program could be significant. But I'm not going to charge you that. I'm going to charge you $8,500 for that whole program from now all the way until you get into medical school. That's what our tuition cost is. And this is actually the first time I'm allowing students to join via the webinar, but because of how engaged you guys have been, and because I wanted to do a special promotion, we are allowing that. And so if you go, I'm going to put it into the chat. You actually, on top of that, I have one more bonus to share you, and then I'm going to go to our questions. So here is an extra bonus for you. If you join from the webinar, you're going to get $1,000 off if you pay in full. So it's $7,500. And I don't do the one-on-one onboardings, but you'll be getting an onboarding with me personally, as well as 5 additional tutoring credits. So that's a lot in value. Those 5 credits would be another $1,000. So you're actually getting $2,000 plus and I charge $500 an hour. So that would be essentially $2,500 extra in bonuses that you're getting. Okay. And so let me put the link in the chat if you're interested. We do have a payment plan option at the standard pricing. You still would get the bonus of the onboarding with me and the additional credits if you do join. So I'm gonna share that in the chat, and then you, or if you want to type that out, so that you can take advantage of this one-time offer if you so desire. And then I'm gonna hop on and answer some more questions for you guys. All right, so that link is in the chat. And while I'm answering, you guys can all, as long as this is going on, you guys can all still take advantage of those extra bonuses. We did do a payment plan option, actually the lowest payment plan option I've ever given away, so that to make it manageable as well. So we do have an option for getting access from the very beginning for only $500 a month. The only difference is you wouldn't get uh, the extra 1,000 discount if you do the payment plan. Okay. And so let me just screen share quickly, and then I'm going to answer all the questions I see popping up in the chat. So this is where to go. You put your name, email. Here's the pay in full discount with, you'll get those bonuses. And then here is the payment plan option. You also can do Klarna if you qualify, if you would like. But we offer a 0% interest payment plan. All right, so now I'm going to take some questions. Does everyone see the link? Let me pin that link. How do I pin this? I actually don't know how to pin it. So I will send it again. All right. And then you guys could type in your questions in the chat. And I will answer them. Group said, are there any? Oh, yes. Yes. Let me get to that. Okay. Good question. Are there any guarantees with this program? There are indeed. So let me get back to the slides. So here are some common questions. And you know what I'll do? I'll keep the link on all the slides so you can get to it. Sorry about that. I just want to grab the link. All right. So I'm putting the link at the bottom of the page, and then I'm just going to keep putting it in the chat. And then I'm going to answer everybody's questions. Okay. So here are some common questions. Is it too early for me to join the program? And the answer to that is definitely not. The earlier you join, the better off it will be, because you actually get access from the point you join all the way until you get in. So the best time to join is right now. Is it too late for you to join as a non-traditional student? Definitely not, because just our MCAT prep alone and admissions is more than this whole program. And so you're actually getting a deal. And some there you can look, there's MCAT courses that are technically more than this alone, and we offer more in our MCAT program. Then someone says, how long do I get access? So this is where our guarantee comes in. So we have an admissions guarantee where we're going to work with you until you get accepted. And so if you end up having to reapply or delay your cycle, let's say you take a extra gap year, we continue to work with you. There's no extra charge until you get in. Okay, so let's see. Let's see. What is the right time to start? Okay, now I'm going to go through all the questions. Someone said, how many clinical hours should you have before applying? There's no magic number, but I do recommend, and again, this offer with the bonus and onboarding with me and the discount will, as long as we're on to here, will apply. Okay. So there's no magic number. I say set 100 of everything as a initial target, 100 clinical, shadowing, and volunteering. And I'm going to share our pre-med tracker in just a bit, but that is a good start. But there's really no magic number. It's more about the quality of the experience than anything else, and how you could talk about it. And so I use 100 just like as a mental, okay, at least I got to this. But many students have many more than that. But if you had 300 hours and someone has 400 hours, that's not going to be the reason they got in and you didn't, if that makes sense. Okay. Nadia, who I believe is one of our members already, said, how do I access tutoring sessions when I'm in the middle of university? So you just, in our pre-med tracker, if you are an ultimate advising student, there's a place where you could book sessions with coaches if they have availability. And if not, you could just message your coach personally and ask them to do a session. And sometimes the coach may, let's say, someone else is an expert in that field. Let's say your coach doesn't do as much orgo tutoring. They may refer you to our orgo expert. So that's how you go about getting those. And he says, I plan to take the test in January 2026. I've been doing passive content review this past summer. Old method, how would you recommend I start effective studying now? Yeah, so you take the test in January 2026. Are you self-studying? Really, what I would be doing is questions and Anki as much as possible. And then obviously, like if you use our course, the last component I would say is going and working either one-on-one or in the group setting on the strategies of how to take the test, right? How to do the passage breakdown, how to get through reading those passages quickly and applying them. Because as you probably know, if you've been studying, it's not just about knowing the content, but it's about interpreting the passages. What is the right time to start MCAT prep if I'm planning on taking a gap year? Okay, I'm gonna X out of this. Does everybody have the link? Is everybody at least on the page? Can you, so that you don't lose it? Everyone click the link now. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Can I see a 6 if everybody has the link? And then that way I just can go and scroll through all the questions. Okay, awesome. Okay, great. All right. So I'm gonna stop the screen share and I'm just gonna answer everybody's questions while you guys are taking advantage of the offer if you decide to do that. If you do, I very look forward to our onboarding session. All right. Okay. Well, where was I in the questions? Any tips for okay, we went over how to start studying. Any tips for non-bio major getting into MCAT prep at the same time as taking the prereqs? I barely have some base knowledge. Well, if you don't have any base knowledge, you might be starting too early. I mean, it's never too early to start, but then the goal is just working on the content. And so to work on the content, what you can do is use the Anki cards that are from the MCAT DAC while you're taking these classes, right? You're taking Orgo, use our Orgo cards, and that is the one freebie. So I do want to let everybody know. If you go to the premedtracker.io, you can get a free account which has our Anki deck in it and our MCAT Kickstarter course. This is just going to be a Kickstarter, like how to study, like basically what I talked about today in slightly more detail. But if you go to premedtracker.io, there is a version, a free version you can grab that will have this, okay? All right. Any tips for non-bio major? Yeah, so that's how I'd start the studying, and then you could still get into those questions, and that's how you're gonna learn. Hi, I got my DVM from Iran and my master's from Canada. I'm working currently as a research associate. So how do you evaluate my chance of getting into med school? I'm now studying and practicing for the MCAT. Well, so you're taking the MCAT soon. So I mean, I'd hope that your scores are near where you want to be. Otherwise, I wouldn't take the test. I see a lot of people make a mistake of they take the test when they're not ready just to see how it goes. You don't want to take this exam unless you are scoring where you want to be. And then you're gonna have to contact the different medical schools individually to see if they're gonna take your classes or if they're gonna want you to take classes in the US. So yeah, Lacey, you said, do you have any suggestions for free or cheaper resources? So I do. So we do have our pre-med tracker software. Um, Let me show you that. At the very least, if you want, what I would recommend doing is getting our pro version of that. So for that, it's $385 a year, and you still get access to all the resources and courses. Not everything you get with Ultimate Advising, but we help track your applications, do school search. You get the online version of the MCAT PowerBook. You get our study skills course. You get the Anki course. Um, so that's a lower cost option for sure. It's not going to have any one-on-one, but you do get access to a community, so you could ask questions in the group. But it's more like our intro level program. It'll still help you for sure. It's just not, going to be reviewing all your personal statements and MCAT tutoring and class tutoring and things like that. Okay. And actually, why don't I'll just so you guys can see, I will show you what it looks like. If you're an Ultimate Advising student, this is what it'll look like. But you could still get access to this tracker, just you wouldn't get all the Ultimate Advising features. Um, for $385 a year. And so this will calculate your science GPA, your cumulative, right? It'll track. This is exactly what it looks like, the table you get on your real application system in AMCAS. And then we also track all the requirements as you're doing it. You'll see a bunch of your TPR courses in here. You won't get all of these if you're not an Ultimate Advising, but you will get some, right? So you won't get the MCAT course here. You won't get the MCAT library. You won't get the full admissions course, but you do get like a Kickstarter course. You get a study skills course and the Anki course. Okay. Um, and we have an AI tutor too, if you get the pro version, which is super helpful. So let's say I'm like, hey, can you explain acid base for the MCAT to me? And so this AI was trained specifically with all pre-med content in mind and MCAT prep. So I know some of you could use GPT now. This is just going to give you a more tailored answer, as you can see, like the nice breakdowns for MCAT studying and class studying. And here's again the link if you guys wanted to take that offer up. If anyone's interested about the offer but they have questions and they don't want to ask them in the chat, you can message me on you know what, I'll pull up my Instagram DMs now. So Adam underscore Nessam is my Instagram. Message me and I will respond. Or you could direct message me in the chat here if you want to direct message me. Someone said, I plan to take the test in. Oh, and Lacey, did that answer your question about the cheaper option for you? The pro version might be a good option for you. Awesome. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for you to get that pro version. And make sure you get all those resources. And then okay, let's see. Someone said, "Can I plan to take the test in August 2026. Is that a good idea for the summer? I've been doing the old method." Yeah, everyone, it's funny how everyone does the old method. With this date planned, it seems I won't know that much of physics as I would not. Well, you have a year to take it. So I like having a year to study for the MCAT. Um, what's the most important thing for MCAT is studying the right way. And in terms of the timeline, you just need to take it before like May of the year you're applying. So if you want to apply straight through to med school, you have to apply as a junior. That means by junior year May, you need to take the test. If you're going to take one gap year, you need to take the test by senior year May. So what year will you be in August 2026? You'll be like have just finished what year? So if you're just finishing sophomore year, then you oh wow. So you're very early. That would be like the absolute earliest to take the test. I don't think you need to take it that early. The earliest I would recommend taking it is January of your junior year. And that would be for someone that's trying not to take a gap year. I'm a senior and planning on taking a gap year. When should I be taking the MCAT? So then, oh, so Sheila, so if you're just starting senior year, then you need to take the MCAT by May of this year. And then you would submit your apps in June. Krish says, my sister got a 524 on the MCAT, but she only had a 3.6 GPA as a bio major. She's currently going to Harvard Medicine. Congrats to her. She told me to keep my major non-traditional so I could waive certain really deep bio courses and get a degree in finance. Only to lower stress and focus, more on a better GPA and extracurriculars. What is your opinion on that? I think it's overall decent, decent advice. I would say like you bio major is fine. A non-traditional major if you're interested, like finance, is good too if you're actually interested in it. Well, I think what she's getting at is like some people will do a biomedical engineering degree, for example, that's very challenging. And if it's very challenging, you have to take these other classes that could bring down your GPA, and you don't want to do that. So there's no reason to get a biomed degree if you're not passionate about it, just because you thought it would look good. You're better off doing something that will make it easier to get good grades. Um, and so I more or less agree with what your sister is saying. But I don't you could do a bio degree and just do basic bio courses. Yeah, there'll be some upper level ones in a bio degree, but like a standard bio degree, the upper level courses are like anatomy, microbiology. These are courses that are look good for med school apps. It's the biomedical engineering, or there's really out there really hard courses with that are impossible to get A's that you want to avoid. All right, guys, this bonus may not last much longer. So if you're interested or you have questions, feel free to message me now or just sign up. And and it's been a pleasure speaking with everyone. I hope this was helpful. Was this helpful for everybody? Awesome. Okay. Love it. Love it. Yeah, and honestly, if you could reach out to me if you were here, you could email me. This is my email if you want to chat more. I'm happy to do that. I could if you're very interested in getting the deal, but you let's say have to speak to a parent or something, let me know. And I could possibly extend it if that's the reason, for example. All right. All right, guys. Have a great night, everybody.
I'm gonna stick around in case anyone had any questions about joining the program, or if you enrolled and wanted to go over anything and wanted to take advantage of those bonuses. And honestly, I sent a reminder text actually to everybody. So you could always text back that number too if you had questions about joining. Oh, and let's see. Is there, I don't know what that means. Anniversary? What does that mean? What's bursary? My friend scored 510 MCAT, GPA 3.8. Is that good? That's solid. You can get in with those scores for sure. It's gonna be slightly below the averages of most MD schools, but it doesn't mean you can't get in. Henry, I don't know what your question is. Steven said, how important are friendships and personal relationships when trying to get into medical school? It's hard to network your way into medical school, but having good friends and peers in pre-med is helpful, which is why we structure it as a community in our program, and we have a lot of supportive pre-meds, and everybody's in there helping each other out and things like that. That's super important. She applied only Texas. I mean, if she only applied Texas, that's okay because specifically if she's a Texas resident, that means a lot. So, um, I think that's okay. I like to apply broadly, but if you really need to be in Texas, then awesome. All right, guys. That's a good question. Does it matter which medical school one goes to for residency? You could get into any residency out of any med school. It's not like, and if you perform well in med school and on your boards, you can still match into competitive specialties. So, will there be more opportunities at some top medical schools? Of course, but any medical school in the US is a big accomplishment. And so, I would be happy with just getting any acceptance in the US. Henry, what options might you suggest if it's a 3.2 GPA? Should you suggest getting in another program? Now, I would potentially take more classes, maybe consider a postbac. It depends exactly where you're at. To be honest, this is like the type of situation where I think the ultimate advising program would be a big help to you, because we could really tailor the advice. And so, let me know if you're interested in that. But I think th 3.2 is a little bit on the low side. I'd like to see at least a couple more semesters of classes that show that you're getting A's. What's an ideal gap year? It depends on where you have gaps in your application. So if you have gaps in research or clinical, like that's what we recommend to our students to try to fill those gaps. 3.4 GPA, focusing on MCAT, should join a master's program. I don't fully understand if that's a question or not, but
What ideal GPA? Well, it's hard to get a 3.2 up at that point. But what you can do is just have a couple good semesters, right? So if you can get it to a 3.4, great. It's more about like if you can get the last 3 semesters you took to be close to a 4.0, they'll see that those semesters were high and that's how you're performing currently as a student. But I mean, I like students to be above a 3.5 and ideally above a 3.7. All right, guys, I'm going to close out the webinar. If you have other questions, feel free to message me. If you're interested in taking up the offer, now is probably your last chance for some of the bonuses. But if depending, like if you needed to speak to a parent or something, feel free to reach out to me. We could see what we could do. Okay. It's been a pleasure. I hope everybody has a great night. And I'll probably do another one maybe next month or something like that. All right, guys, have a great day. Glad it was helpful, Vishnu. Have a good night.